Kia ora. Good evening. Welcome to Ramadan Conversations. We are all in this together program. It's presented by the Pearl of the Islands Foundation New Zealand under the umbrella of Dialogue Institute of Australia. My name is George Donikian and I will be hosting tonight's episode of Ramadan Conversations with guests from across the ditch, or I call them our friends from New Zealand. The Pearl of the Islands Foundation, of course, for those of you that may not know, was established back in 2006 by a group of young New Zealand Muslim youth. Their mission, simply to foster understanding and acceptance between people of diverse communities through meaningful engagement and intercultural events. The Pearl of the Islands Foundation really works comprehensively to celebrate diversity and to advance social cohesion between cultures, as well as contributing to the educational, cultural, and overall social well-being of Aotearoa. Now, they do that through established institutions, through platforms and activities. Alongside community engagement and outreach, the Pearl of the Islands Foundation does this through several intercultural and interfaith dialogue-based events, things like the Ramadan Iftar dinners, a number of specialist talks and a series of panels. Ramadan Conversations, we're all in this together, is a 1-hour live Ramadan conversation with guests from all walks of life. I'm talking about parliamentarians, religious leaders, community advocates, and of course, academics. Ramadan Mubarak. Again, my name is George Donikian. We have 3 special guests, but before I introduce them, a very important opportunity now to welcome my co-host, Ms Tayyaba Khan. Her wakapaka of forced displacement has inevitably led to 2 decades of serving migrant and refugees communities in government and third sector roles. Having lived and worked in New Zealand, in Palestine, Australia and the UK, Tayyaba has had a unique opportunity to apply her interdisciplinary qualifications of mental health and international development in practice. And as you will discover tonight, Tayyaba is deeply passionate about working with minority and faith-based communities. Her latest voluntary passion includes building up the Khadija Leadership Network. And of course, representing the European Muslim League as their New Zealand ambassador for peace. Tayyaba, wonderful to have you as the co-host. What have you made of this year's Ramadan thus far?
Oh, hi, George. Look, a unique Ramadan indeed, with lockdown around the world, but an opportunity to really reflect on the struggles of many, many others around the world, particularly in the developing countries. So, yeah, it's a pleasure to be here tonight.
We have a wonderful program, Tayyaba, in store. Not only will we be hearing from 3 special guests who have interesting and distinct contributions to make to the public discourse, but a number of musical items as well. Let's introduce our first guest, a distinguished professor, Paul Spoonley, who until recently was the Pro-Vice-Chancellor of the College of Humanities and Social Sciences at Massey University. He's the author or editor of not 1, not 2, but 27 books, the most recent being Rebooting the Regions. That was way back in 2016. I can't believe 4 years have gone. Currently, he's writing 2 books, one on social and demographic change in New Zealand, while the other concerns the extreme right in this country. He's the leader of a research program on the impacts of immigration and diversity on Aotearoa. And in 2011, you might be pleased to know, he was made a Fellow of the Royal Society of New Zealand and indeed granted the title Distinguished Professor by Massey University in 2013. And among the many questions we have for you tonight, Professor, very keen to hear about the impact of COVID-19 pandemic and the impact it's having on society and culture, especially as education is New Zealand's 3rd largest industry. Professor Paul Spoonley, thank you very much for joining us on Ramadan Conversations.
Yes, good evening, Tayyaba. Good evening, George. Ramadan Mubarak.
As a sociologist, what do you think of the political, social? As a sociologist, what do you think of the political, social, and cultural implications of COVID-19 for the community in New Zealand and the New Zealand society?
Well, I think it's one of those moments where we check how socially resilient we are. So in all our countries, I think there's a lot been made about the economic impacts, but also we've got impacts around our social resilience and social cohesion. And I think we're going to test those as we move out of this acute phase into the next phase. So I think COVID-19 is one of those moments of reset locally and internationally.
Tayyaba.
Right. Professor Spoonley, you've conducted research on hate speech, immigration, and diversity. How will this change because of COVID-19?
Well, I think there's a good news and a not so good news story around that. I think what's really been disappointing to me is the impact that we've seen amongst both the far right, but also those who are willing to believe in conspiracy theories. So yet again, as we always see on these occasions, a spike in what I would broadly define as hate speech. On the positive side, I think what we're seeing is a degree of social outreach and between religious and ethnic communities, which is very refreshing. I mean, we hear some of the negative stories, but we should acknowledge that during this moment, we've been really reaching out to our compatriots around the country and offering them the hand of friendship. I wrote something called Bears Everywhere, and I'm not sure whether the same is true in Australia, but we've been putting bears in our windows. And what a great initiative it's been as we reach out to those younger members of our community and say, look, we're all in this together. So there's quite a positive message about social cohesion in all of this as well.
Professor, those bears have travelled across the ditch very well, seamlessly, some would say. We've seen them all over the country. Can I just ask you a double bunger? Has the public perception of the Muslim community in New Zealand changed in the last year, especially after the happenings of March 15? And the second part, has the image of New Zealand, do you think, changed globally?
Yes, George, I think, can I go to the second one first? I mean, as you mentioned before, I'm doing a book about the far right. I think what we've seen is since 2016 is a spike in the number of far right groups around the world, and particularly using online facilities. I mean, it's been very disappointing. And so I'm working with Tell Mama, who you might know are the UK-based group that reports on Islamophobic comment. And so we're trying to get a handle on that. And unfortunately, what happened on the 15th of March 2019 has become something of an exemplar, and I hate to use that word, for other far-right groups. And that's very, very disappointing. In terms of New Zealand, I'm very, very pleased to have seen how our leaders in the Muslim community, but our leaders generally, reacted after the 15th of March, led by our Prime Minister. I thought she showed empathy in terms of providing comfort and leadership in a very, very difficult situation. So our Muslim community in New Zealand, our Muslim brothers and sisters, are a very small part of New Zealand, but I think generally we have learned a lot more about that community, and there's been a lot more interaction, which can only be good.
Tayyaba.
Professor Spoonley, do you think New Zealand could provide a lead to other countries on matters of religious and ethnic diversity and need to?
Tayyaba, I've lost you there. Could you repeat the question, please?
Yeah,
the question should be,
do you think New Zealand could provide a lead to other countries on matters of
religious
yes, I
and
do. Yes, I do. But then I'm a bit cautious, Tayyaba, because New Zealand's a very small country. As you know, we're very intimate. I mean, well, as in Australia perhaps, but we do tend to call our Prime Minister by her first name and be on first name first name in terms of our leaders. So a country of 5 million is not like a much bigger country. But I think what we've done, both since the 15th of March, but also more generally, is actually accept that diversity is who we are. And I certainly compare what we see in Australia and New Zealand with many European countries and the USA at the moment, where we see a lot more demonization of immigration, a lot more demonization of religious and ethnic minorities. And I think what we can do is say that degree of social cohesion, of a willingness to see diversity as a positive, not a problem or a negative, I think is one of the things that we should take out there. The second thing I would very quickly add is that leadership, leadership, leadership. Leadership sets the tone. And you've got Farid Ahmed coming on later. I mean, the Muslim community have shown enormous strength and resilience during these times and have been willing to reach out to others. And I'm sure your viewers will see that later. And I think that's one of the points that I would want to make. I mean, we can't always, well, we can choose our political leaders because we vote them in democratic countries, but I do think our political leadership could do better, and I think ours has done a pretty good job.
Let me just concur. You said leadership, leadership, leadership. Jacinta Ardern, or as you call her, Jacinta,
Yes.
has been magnificent from the very first images we saw. She's handled herself with great poise. I thought she showed enormous empathy, not only to those that were hurt, but to the rest of the community. And she made sure that inclusion was a very big part of her messaging. And she hasn't shifted. In fact, so good has her messaging been, I think about 20 million of the 25 million Australians may well vote for her at the next election.
Yes, George, you can't have her. She's ours. And what's instructive, I think, is the when President Trump rang her and said, "What can we do?" her answer was, "You can reach out to your Muslim community and make them feel welcome," or words to that effect. And it's a good message. You know, that you are one of us is a message that we all perhaps ought to repeat.
Professor, you've been a delight and you've given us much to think about. Professor Paul Spoonley for joining us on Ramadan Conversations. Thank you so very much.
Thank you, and can I wish you all the best in this holy month. Thank you very much indeed.
It's all yours, Tayyaba.
Yeah, and George, now we have a Maori music performance from Epsom Mills Grammar High School. There are two sisters, and names are Brise Raweri and Legacy Raweri.
Merhaba, kia ora, ko Legacy tōku ingoa, ko Breeze tōku ingoa, and we'll be singing a Māori song that is about not worrying about the past and that there will always be a new day ahead of us. Mapiti mai ko te rā, ka ua te a. He rā hou tēnei pahura, hi ake ai ko te rā, kia whakanuia. Ki tēnei rā hou pahura, e whiti mai te rā me o tini ka rā, ka rewa mai ko koe he ariki e kitua. I ngā rā kouri, i reira koe o ana, e rā hoi tēnei pahura. Haine te kiri, pāupe te riri, mai ko koe, kia ngā wari. Te rua ka mua, kia murua i ngā hara, e rā hou tēnei pahura.
How good was that, huh? How good was that?
Great.
The harmonies of the Rawiri sisters, Breeze and Legacy. I was pretty impressed. Very good, very good. Tayyaba, our next guest is Michael Wood, who's a Labor Member of Parliament. Yes, we've found a parliamentarian. Michael is the MP for Mount Roskill and Labor's senior whip. For those of you that may not know about him, and there will be very, very few of you, he was first elected to Parliament at the 2016 Mount Roskill by-election. In opposition, he was Labor's spokesperson for Transport, for Revenue and Consumer Affairs. And after the 2017 election, he was appointed as the Parliamentary Under-Secretary to the Minister for Ethnic Communities and became chair of the Finance and Expenditure Select Committee. And of course, midway through last year, he became senior whip of the Labor Party. He's hosted several Ramadan iftar dinners over the years with the Pearl of the Islands Foundation. Michael, really appreciate you joining us. And again, we're trying to do something that we're hoping to keep up throughout the entire Ramadan Conversations program. We're trying to gain insight into not only what's happening around us during this global emergency, we're trying to work out what the pandemic has done and how it's impacted on our lives. But I want to know also the damage it's done to our livelihoods, because no one saw this coming.
Well, kia ora koutou katoa, Ramadan Mubarak, and thanks for the invitation to be part of this conversation tonight, and just acknowledging everyone at Pearl of Islands Foundation who's made it possible. Look, George, you're right. There's just no denying that there's a huge impact from COVID. There's a health impact, there's an economic impact, there's a social impact, I dare say there's a spiritual impact on many people as well. And that's what we're grappling with at the moment. And I think for whether it's governments, community groups, society as a whole, boy, it's a whole lot of really big stuff to deal with in a very compressed time period. You know, I think in both of our countries, we've had lockdown conditions for about 6 or 7 weeks, and it feels like much, much longer than that. But actually, it's been a very short period.
Michael, you've been the first. New Zealand was the first country to say, hey, to understand what was coming and to do something about it in a pretty meaningful way.
Well, look, it's been mentioned before, we've had incredible leadership from our Prime Minister, Jacinda Ardern. It's been empathetic, as you've said, but there's also been a need for quite quick and decisive leadership for people to take decisions. And she, as the leader of our government, has certainly done that. But what she would also emphasise is that it's only worked because we've had a team of 5 million, that we've had extraordinary social solidarity, and everyone's pulled together. Nearly everyone's done the right thing. And that has helped us to get to the position that we're at now, where we're on track to eliminate this virus in New Zealand and move into a recovery phase where we can begin to put things together economically and socially for people.
Wow.
That's
Tayyaba?
Fantastic. Pearl of the Islands Foundation organises and hosts people from diverse backgrounds every year with their Ramadan iftar dinners. You've hosted some yourself, and so some of these have been in Auckland and Wellington. How do you think these iftars have contributed to society?
Look, Tayyaba, I've drawn enormous value from attending and with Pearl of Islands Foundation hosting some of those Ramadan dinners and iftar meals. I just think there's a value that you can't overstate in bringing people together and doing it in a way that is warm and generous and open and hospitable. And to me, what you get out of that is people moving out of their little bubbles of what they know and feeling comfortable about getting to know how other people practice their faith and their traditions. And I just think that is such an important thing if we want to build genuine social cohesion in our communities. And look, the other thing that I think I've drawn out of those meals is I come to these meals as a practicing Christian, as someone from a different but related faith. You experience the unique differences and beauties of a different faith and culture and tradition, but you also see the commonalities and the things that actually bind and bring us together as well. And I think it's the two of those things together that have made my Ramadan and iftar experiences really special.
Michael, well said. That I think there is so much that we can look at and share. It's important. You have also had an especially busy time, if my homework has been accurate, especially over the last month or two. As you said, there's been tremendous work behind the scenes, a great team helping to lead New Zealand through this pandemic. Can we reflect on some of what has been happening? Give us a sense from your perspective.
Well, certainly. I mean, there's been a huge amount happening. We talked before about that action from the government in very quickly taking action to close our borders and to move into the level 3 and 4 lockdown periods, which has been a significant restriction on the kind of normal things that we would do. So, we've more or less said to people, don't go to work, stay at home, don't send your kids to school. Only send one person from your household out ever to do the shopping. That is an enormous and unprecedented change to the way that people live their lives. We've never, ever done it before. But we did it with that simple message, and the Prime Minister phrased it like this. She said, be kind, stay at home, and save lives. So those extraordinary and unprecedented actions were linked to something good that we could do together. I'm a relatively fit and healthy man. I don't think I can say young man anymore. I turned 43 days ago. COVID-19 will probably not particularly affect people in my age group. But there are other people, more vulnerable people in our community who face such serious consequences. Do you know, in New York City, 1 in 60 people over the age of 75 have died because of this terrible disease. And the action we have taken together...
They're losing 1,000.
We have been that's right. It's just incredible. We've had the tragedy of 21 people who have lost their lives in New Zealand, but we faced thousands potentially. And because people came together and took this action, and I'll just repeat this again, the government could have said, do all of these things, but if millions of people had have ignored it, to be honest, it would have been difficult to have done much about it. But people didn't ignore it. They heard the message from the Prime Minister. They cared about the people around them, and we came together and did it. And I think that's the big story about what's happened. Decisive leadership from government, empathetic leadership, but social solidarity, people caring for each other. And I can't also forget to mention the incredible work of our frontline workers, those people perhaps who've undervalued for some time, our supermarket workers, our nurses, our cleaners. Boy, have those people shown us and reminded us how they are.
Tayyaba?
Thank you, Michael. And whilst there have been some sad stories in the community, how would you encourage people to remain positive?
That's such a good question, because I know that a lot of people out there have had personal challenges in their lives at this time. Stress levels rise, tensions come about in people's lives and people's families, incredible difficulties for people in small business, people who have lost their jobs. Very tough for a lot of people. We're doing everything we can there. But there's also something about how we try and look forward and try and find the positives. And a few things I would say are, firstly, both in Aotearoa, New Zealand and Australia, we can feel fortunate that we live in these beautiful, caring, wealthy, well-resourced countries in which we have got the capacity to rebuild. And we can't forget there are other countries who are going to find this tougher than we will find it. We can look at the strengths that have come through from our communities and our families. I've seen so many groups across the community step forward and help others during this difficult period. That's something we can feel positive about. The final thing I'll touch on is this, and Paul Spoonley before used the word reset. We can look to this period and actually look at some of the good things that have happened and say, let's not just rebuild what we had, let's actually rebuild something better. There was a beautiful story in the newspaper about 2 weeks ago. It was a photo of Okahu Bay and one of our beautiful beaches close to central Auckland. And it was a photo of fish in the shallows of the water. And the Maori people who lived near to there said they hadn't seen fish there for 40 years. But through this period, we'd kept the water clean. We've seen those pictures of cities around the world where people have seen the skyline that's been polluted for 50 years. In Auckland City, we've given most of our homeless people a place to live. Let's not send them back onto the streets. You know, there are things, strengths that have come through in this period of crisis that I think we can draw hope from and build into a new and better normal as we recover. And I think that's a positive thing we can all focus around and mobilise towards.
You've left us on a high, Michael Wood. Thank you so very much for joining us on Ramadan Conversations.
Shukran, thank you.
George. We now have a
Yes.
beautiful Maori performance and haka dance from Auckland Grammar Boys.
We've got a group of young men now who are going to perform a very special Maori song. But they're not just ordinary New Zealanders. They are from Auckland Grammar. Please make them welcome.
Ko tēnei tātou nā te ara, e ngā tamata tāmaki, kia ori te! Wā ringa ringa, e tārana, keiwa a hoki mai! Oh, ti, katonu! Ti, katonu!
Yeah, that was Magic Tayyaba from the IFLC concert. And can I just say what is not apparent there? That performance was spellbinding. And if you were there live, the hair on the back of your neck stood up. And it was made even more powerful for me because one of the young men had, I think, lost his grandmother that morning. And the wish was to finish the performance, not let the audience down. You know, the lovely line, "The show must go on." Well, he performed admirably, as they all did, and they were an enormous credit to not only all of Auckland, but all of New Zealand that they represented. We're so very proud of them. And anytime they want to come to Australia and perform, we're going to line up and watch them do it.
That was a really moving performance.
It makes a huge difference when you have special people who have something about them, whether it's passion, whether it's poise under pressure. And as I use those words, I'm reminded of our final guest for this evening, someone who has had to live through something quite terrible. He's a peace advocate. His name is Farid Ahmed. Farid has lived in New Zealand for 30 years, and 21 years ago, I think he became a paraplegic when a drunk driver ran him over in the street. Miraculously, Farid survived. I think he had to survive because he had a lot of work to do. He's confined to a wheelchair these days, but that hasn't stopped him from being a senior leader at the Deans Avenue Mosque in Christchurch, and he works as a homeopath. Since the attacks in last year, he has managed to speak around the world, and he's preached this message of forgiveness and love. People still cannot believe how passionate he has been about it. We're going to find out what makes him tick. We're going to find out why he's been so special. Let's welcome Farid Ahmed to Ramadan Conversations. Farid, welcome.
Assalamu alaikum. Peace be upon you all.
Farid, you were one of the survivors of the mosque attack in Christchurch, and incredibly, you forgave the terrorist. Can you give our audience a sense of why you were so strong and behaved in this particular way? Because some people may not believe it.
I said those forgiveness word in a moment, in a time that, I was not able to think or edit or go through the pros and cons because I was under tremendous stress, and it came out spontaneously, probably because that's what I was. All my life, my faith, my upbringing, and also my work and my teaching, it made me like this. So when even the shooting was going on, I was feeling sympathetic towards him, as I was also feeling that every bullet sound was going through my heart. I was feeling for the victim, but I was also feeling for him, and I was wondering, I was questioning, why is he doing this? If he had understanding like me, then probably he would not have done that. So I was feeling sympathetic that the poor guy, he does not have the respect for himself, respect for his own family and his people, and also respect for other human being, because he does not have peace in his heart. So I wanted peace in my heart, and I was in peace, and the result of peace was that, I forgave. I didn't want to, have a heart. I gave an example like a burning volcano, because a volcano is angry, eruptive, and boiling inside, and no happiness or peace inside if my heart is like a volcano. And I choose all my life not to have a volcanic heart, but to have a peaceful heart. So for his mistake, my logic was, why did I have to punish myself?
Incredible.
Thank
Absolutely
you,
incredible.
Since March 15th, your message has been consistent. You've advocated for and demonstrated peace, forgiveness, and understanding. Why do you think these messages are important?
I think it is a responsibility on me, and also it is a right for all human on me, because in this planet, I am surviving because directly or indirectly, the entire human, the planet, we are assisting one another. I'm not separated. So they have rights on me and I have rights on them. So I believe that the humanity has rights on me for a couple of reasons. One, that we human being, we forget, we need reminder. So my message is like a reminder. So many good people out there are doing this job. What I'm doing is not a new thing, but to me, added to their list will make the voice louder and greater. And we need to make our voice bigger and bigger and bigger to remind the human being that we should care for one another. And this reminder will improve our mentality, our attitude, and also, I hope, will change the world towards the better.
Farid, I love the way you've used this imagery of the volcano. New Zealand has had another tragedy in the meantime, the White Island volcanic eruption, which took lives and shocked a lot of people, not only in New Zealand but around the world. The imagery that you've painted for us about the pain and the agony and the anger within someone is palpable. While you were telling that story, I was sitting there saying to myself, what a remarkable image that you've painted for us. But it hasn't stopped there for you. You are currently in the middle of writing a book about your wife, who was such a very special part of your life. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
I actually have finished the book and it is in the market
now.
So, yeah. So the name is Husna's Story, My Wife, Christchurch Massacre, and My Journey Towards Forgiveness. So, and the publisher is Australian. Thank you, Australians. So, wonderful. Ellen and Unwin is the publisher. The book is on the market and it is selling well. Well, your question was that why did I want to write this book? In one sentence, probably, is to spread the love. Because this book is a story about my wife, her contribution towards the society, and what sort of things we can be inspired by her extraordinary work and personality. This book also a story of describing what happened in that particular day, because I was there, and I saw a lot. And all other time in the media, the message was coming by patches, by patches, by patches. But I wanted to accumulate all of this and, try to put a paint on the picture. So that was also because of the love of the victims. And also in that book, I had to also write down the compassionate response from New Zealand government, most particularly our Honorable Prime Minister, and also our city mayor, our leaders, and the whole New Zealand, and most particularly the compassionate Christchurch people. So I wanted to also acknowledge their contribution as a token of love. And also most particularly, I had another inspiration in me that, I should use this book and get the income to help my city people. So I donated all my royalty to St. John Ambulance, because ambulance service is something without discriminating, they look after each and every human who are in need. So all of it was because of spreading the love.
That is truly inspirational, Farid. Thank you so much for sharing that with us.
Thank you.
What would be your Ramadan message to the world?
Well, as I understand what is Ramadan for is, there is a verse in the Quran which says, chapter 2, verse 183, it says that, "O you who believe, the fasting is prescribed on you as it was prescribed on others, to learn self-control, righteousness." So fasting, to me is a training month, a training course to become a righteous person, in other words, to become a good citizen, a best human, a best mother, a best father, a best child, a best businessman, leader, etc., etc., etc. So my message is to me that I should take it as a training to learn self-control, controlling my anger. I should control my greed, and I should do the better things like generosity, compassion, love. By controlling anger, I should not do any domestic violence. By controlling my greed, I should take the lesson that from the fasting, that I feel the hunger in 12, 13 hours from fasting, and I should feel the pain for other hungry people all around the world, and I should use that righteous action, generosity, and compassion to reach other people, vulnerable people. So my message is to me and to others: let us become compassionate and righteous people to change the world, to make our world a peaceful place, a harmonious place.
Farid, your words speak glowingly about the love in your heart. They also tell me very much that you were raised by people who loved their family, and they loved especially you. They filled you with that love. Can you give us a sense of your wife, to give to those that don't know her, something that is profound? In other words, give us a sense of the woman that you know, that so many others don't know what she's like.
Well, I can start with her last action. Her last action was heroic. She, came to the mosque while shooting was going on 3 times. It means first time she escaped. She could run away. She could save her life. Second time she escaped. Also she could run away. She could save her life. But third time, why did she have to come?
Because she loved her man.
Because she was, yes. And she took life risk to save other people. So this is her. She always put other people before her.
When did you find out, Farid, that she came 3 times, or she had 3 opportunities to flee but kept coming back to the church? When did you discover that, or could you see her?
I could not see, but I discovered that after a couple of days, the eyewitnesses who saw her, the ladies, who she was with, and also
Wow.
the last person, who had seen her, so from inside the mosque. So, those people, they told me the story, and then I, solved the puzzles, and it made very good sense that what actually she was doing, and it also, meshed with her personality, with her caring personality. In my Bangladeshi community here, all the young families, ladies, she was for them, she was their mother figure. So when she was gone, they were crying and they were saying that we lost a mother.
Farid, how old was your wife when she lost her life?
She was 46.
Too young.
Yeah, very young.
But what a legacy she has left! What an amazing amount of love she put into your relationship, and what an incredible story that you leave, or she leaves us with. And when you were telling us the story about not once, not twice, but 3 times, I had a chill go through me. That is selflessness and deep love that very few people can understand. Imagine the poise under enormous fear, and yet she had a greater desire to make sure that the people in her life that she loved were safe, or she could do something about them. Incredible story.
And that is,
the book again. Tell us
you
about
are
the book
right.
again. Tell me about the book. The name of the book is?
So the name of the book is Husna's Story. Husna's
Husna's Story.
Story. Yeah, so
Wow.
if you Google it, you'll find it. So the point you made, I just wanted to add a little that her life is a good example for me, and that's what I also wanted to paint in the book, that you and I, we are living in this life temporarily, but we live an image. And our image will build up by what we do. And people remember our image. If we live good work, people remember us with good image. If we live this world with bad work, then people, do not, appreciate remembering us even. And, this is what something we all need to do, because, we all need to leave behind a good image.
Well, the legacy that she has left is incredible. We talk about immortality. As long as that book tells her story and is clearly enunciated, as you have clearly demonstrated to us tonight on this program, Ramadan Conversations, I'll tell you that as long as that book is able to be read, then she will live forever.
She will.
Farid, thank you so very much. Before I let you go, there's one thing that's been pressing on my mind. I've been wanting to find the time to ask, and I think we've got a few minutes before we finish the program. Sure. You've travelled around the world over the last few months before the lockdown, and you've been speaking about the challenges, about peace, about the message of goodwill. How has it been received? How have your discussions and your talks been received around the world?
I think it was received very well, and probably, the organizers, before they invited me, they thought that it would go well, because organizers, they do their calculation at first, before they ask people to go. So I must say that in this world there are so many good people. So many good people. They are working very, very hard. And, those conferences gave me more hope and more energy that actually this world is not so bad. It is so big, still so big. Yes, there are tiny, problems. Sometimes when we focus on problems too much, then we see, oh, everything is crashing. But actually, going around the world made me see, no, the world is big. The world is still peaceful. Most people want peace. Most people are loving and caring. We just need to come together, and then we can change the world. So it was very positive. And yeah.
Tayyaba, if you're listening to Farid, he reminds me that once upon a time I was told that we are wired for bad news. Yeah? For example, I was told many, many years ago when I first started in television, they said you shouldn't read all the fan mail, or you shouldn't read every letter. And of course, I always felt that if someone writes you a letter, it's important that you read it. And then, of course, what fascinates me is how we respond to the letters. Now, imagine, most people, if you get 99 letters and they say you're fabulous and lovely, you'd be happy. But you'd be surprised how many people remember the one letter or the 2 or 3 letters out of the hundreds that come and are negative. And I think the message that you give us, Farid, is so important. there are so many good people on this planet, so many good people around the world who do fabulous work, and yet we remember the very small number who create problems for so many.
Exactly. Well said, my friend.
No. Thank you very much for everything you've contributed tonight. You've made our Ramadan conversation very special. Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank you very
George.
much, Farid.
Thank you, Tayyaba. And thank you,
Thank
Peers of
you.
Ireland. And I acknowledge all the guests. Thank you.
Tayyaba, what did you make of that program, and more especially, what did you make of Farid?
Oh, he's a beautiful soul, and look, it's wonderful that we have someone like him in New Zealand, especially after March 15th. He's just been a beacon of hope.
Yeah, he has been. What have you made of your co-hosting opportunity on Ramadan Conversations?
I have loved working with you, George. I've learned a lot tonight. Thank you for that.
Just remember, next time we want your headphones, all right?
Yeah, I will.
No, Tayyaba, before I let you go, you do some tremendous work, and I touched on it with the introductions early on. I wish you every success throughout the year. I also wish you through the holy month of Ramadan a peaceful time and a time of real contemplation and reflection. And I just should add, the next episode of Ramadan Conversations is scheduled for tomorrow, although it's coming from Sydney. Do not worry. As for this particular episode, it will be uploaded to the YouTube channel from the islands. It'll be terrific. However, our next New Zealand broadcast, Tayyaba, will air Thursday, the 21st of May. Now, should you wish to catch up on any of the other conversations that have happened over the past 2 months, or view this one again, you can find them all, of course, on the Affinity YouTube channel. And of course, the community have done a tremendous job behind the scenes to make sure that these conversations run as smoothly as possible. What did you make of our entertainment tonight?
Oh, look, I thought that was beautiful, really moving performances, and I concur with you. There's been a lot of hard work to make these Ramadan conversations possible. So a huge acknowledgement to the team behind the scenes.
And thank you once again, Tayyaba, and Ramadan Mubarak.
Ramadan Mubarak to you.